is the consensus that it is always beneficial, or were there drawbacks as well that were inconsistent with that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And our students know our favorite answer in exercise science is it depends. How can we take what they've learned in the classroom and use that into their field, whether they're going to be a physical therapist or their strength and conditioning? And I think it just all goes back to education. People don't know what they don't know.
Hello and welcome back to UNA Talks. My name is Lee Taylor. I'm your host, and today my guest is Dr. Lauren Killen. Dr. Killen is an associate professor of exercise science in the Department of Kinesiology in the College of Education and Human Sciences, and she is also the director of the Human Performance Research Lab there. So that's a long title a lot of cool responsibilities, but thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dr. Killen and I are going to get into some really interesting things today. She is an expert on something that, if you're like me, you depend on and think about a lot and consume a lot of, which is caffeine.
Right.
So
yeah.
I thought that was so cool whenever I asked you, hey, what's something you would want to kind of share. This turned out to be, what you did your dissertation on, and a lot of research has gone into the effects of caffeine on the human body and our brains and all sorts of things. So I'm really excited to get to that today.
Yeah, me too. It'll be great.
And we'll see if I drink more or less after we talk. I don't know.
Hey, it's a good thing.
Probably. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, then maybe I won't change too much. But so tell me about your background. Where are you from, and how did you end up at UNA?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Faultville, Alabama, so a tiny town about an hour and 15 minutes south of here. Came to UNA to do my undergraduate degree, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Health, Physical Education, and Recreation with a concentration in exercise science. And my original plan was to go to PT school, and got to my senior year, and that just really wasn't what I wanted to do anymore, so I actually stayed at UNA and did a master's. Got involved in research with some of our faculty, and then ended up at Middle Tennessee to work on my PhD, and then had the opportunity to come back to UNA as my first job. And I was a visiting professor for one of our faculty that was on sabbatical, and then from there just had the opportunity to roll into a tenure track line after that, and I guess that's kind of history. And then I've been here for 10 years now.
Tell me what changed your mind from physical therapy into more around kinesiology and exercise science.
Yeah, so I just thought physical therapy was the route I wanted to go. It's a great career, and we have a lot of students that go that path. But then just really wanted to find a career that was going to, impact a lot of people, which physical therapy does. And I honestly never really thought about teaching in the higher education world here. A lot of my family is more elementary, secondary teachers, and I thought I didn't want to go the teaching route. So I would say teaching really found me versus me finding teaching, but definitely a passion of mine. I love interacting with our students, and we get obviously a new group every semester, so just getting to learn them and learn their personalities and help them find what their passion is, so how they're going to go and impact the world here.
Do you work with a lot with like student athletes, and were you one as well? Is that right?
I was not a student athlete, not in higher ed, in high school. Yeah, we do have a good bit of athletes in our department here in exercise science, and also in sport and rec management there. So we do work a good bit with athletes.
I feel like there's a lot of overlap there as far as the group, the subgroups that get together over there. So.
Absolutely, and I think that's how a lot of students figure out or think they want to go the PT route. They've had an injury, and then they go to physical therapy themselves, and then they feel like that's their calling for a career there.
Yeah. So tell me about whenever you were able to come back to UNA and teach. What was that experience like, having had the background here and being a student?
Yeah. So I would say it's kind of a full circle experience. I'd been a student here for 5 years between my undergrad and my master's, and then I was gone for 4 working on my PhD, and had always had the dream of coming back to UNA. Honestly, never thought that would be my first job or my first, career opportunity here. And, I'd been interviewing in that whole process, had a couple other offers on the table. But me and my husband are both UNA alum and love the Florence and Shoals area here. And we actually both got job offers in the same week. So I just think it was meant to be and hadn't looked back ever since.
So how long have you been here now?
I just finished my 10th year
Awesome.
at UNA. Yeah.
Very cool. Tell me about your day-to-day in the in your, not only in your classroom but in the research lab, and sort of what that looks like, what your role is, how students are involved.
Yeah, so I would say there are no 2 days that are alike typically in our role here. So I do teach at the undergrad and the graduate level. Most of our grad classes only meet once a week, so it's not like I'm meeting with them multiple times a week, but I do oversee our graduate assistants in the Human Performance Lab, and that's 12 graduate assistants, both at the master and the doctoral level. And so their responsibilities are, one, making sure our Human Performance Lab is running on daily tasks, and it could be just making sure our equipment's stocked and ready, assisting undergrad students in the lab. We have a lot of research projects going on, so they're involved with that a lot, as well as they also teach some of our undergraduate classes, from our activity classes up until our like junior, senior level courses. So touching base with them each morning, making sure they're good, we don't have any problems in the lab before the day is getting started, and then teaching my classes as well, and then I'll touch base with them throughout the day as well.
I recently got to visit the lab. We did some video work over there with the marketing department, and just really amazing all the stuff that's going on, and sort of like not a huge space. Like there's something completely different going on one area to the next,
Right.
and students doing real research and real work
Right.
around these subjects, and finding new discoveries, and I was pretty blown away with just how much was in there, just like right in front of me, and what all that equipment was capable of. What has the evolution of that space looked like over the last 10 years?
Yeah, so when I first came back to UNA, as well as when I was a student, our lab was in Flowers Hall in the top floor, and
That's our gym. For
yeah,
people who
in
don't
the
know.
gym. And so pretty small space.
Yeah.
And I mean, we utilized every inch of it, but as soon as they renovated Bennett Infirmary for us, and we moved down there, we've been there about 5 years now, we've maximized the space pretty much day one.
Sure.
Which is great. I mean, we have so much going on, and our students have opportunities down there that they may not have at another institution. Definitely couldn't have housed that in the gym.
Yeah.
It just was too small at that point, and that was before our doctoral program as well. But yeah, we have stuff going on in the lab, I would say anytime from like 4 to 5 a.m. sometimes, and I've had students up there till 10, 11 o'clock at night. So sometimes it seems like it's almost a 24-hour operation, which is a great thing. I mean, they're maximizing every piece of equipment we've got, all the space we have going on too. And we use it anywhere from like research projects that maybe a faculty member is conducting or a graduate student, even to like our classes. Our classes use that space daily as well.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the college experience. It's kind of a 24-hour.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
you kind of need to be. There's days where you need to be at the library till midnight, and
Right.
there's days where you don't. But or whatever that looks like. So that seems appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I date myself to long enough to know that whenever I was a student, that was the infirmary. So it was wild to walk in. I
Right.
hadn't been in there in a long time. Probably since my a sinus infection I had in my junior
Right.
year at UNA.
Yeah.
But walking in and seeing what you guys have done with it, been able to do with that space has been really incredible. And just kind of the like all the equipment, but also the exercise equipment and all the stuff that's like really obvious kind of what it does, but just them explaining to me how you can literally be standing on I don't even know what it was called, but like it's a piece of machinery that you can literally stand on without with bare feet, and you put your hands on, and it'll pretty much tell you whatever you want it to whatever you want it to about
absolutely.
your blood pressure and all these amazing things. I'm probably getting all that wrong, but it's pretty amazing that all the information that these students are able to get from that, and sort of this stuff that they're learning how to use. What do you see as far as UNA's place sort of in this research right now? What is the exposure, the level of exposure that our undergrads and graduate students are able to have versus maybe some larger schools? It seems pretty comparable
Yeah.
as far as kind of what they have access to.
Yeah, I would say equipment-wise, we're fairly comparable to a larger university. Again, just depending on funding of what different schools look like. But I would say our students have opportunities to use multiple pieces of equipment that you would see at a larger institution. And when I say students using it, that's anywhere from like our doc students, our master students that may be conducting their own research projects, but we do involve our undergrad students, and they can help a graduate student with their project. We've had some actually lead their own projects or even assist faculty members, so they're getting hands-on experience to be able to go out into a community setting that they may have some of these pieces of equipment, or if they want to go on to a graduate program, they're already familiar with how that works or what it's measuring and how to operate it. So yeah.
And is there a new piece of equipment that's on its way here pretty soon? Dr. Kenny was telling me about something. I can cut this out if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. Okay. So we are getting a DEXA, which
what is that?
So it's a dual energy X-ray absorptometry.
Of course.
So yeah,
that was my first guess.
A big fancy name. So what it actually does is it measures bone mineral density, but also can do a complete body composition analysis with that. So yeah, it's a pretty cool piece of equipment that you honestly don't see at most universities.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, we're very fortunate and grateful to be adding that piece to our lab and look to use it in multiple places, from demonstrations in class to research, with students or in our community. With bone mineral density could be greatly used from like an older population or even in our faculty and staff wellness program. I've used one before in my graduate program, and they used it with like our athletes. So really fits any population we're working with.
What is kind of the outcomes for someone with an exercise science degree other than education? Like, so that may be obvious to someone in the field, but for me, that's kind of something that I'm not as familiar with, right? So if I have an exercise science degree, or I want to go out and do research outside of education, what are those opportunities look like? In the corporate world or in nonprofit, where is those placements?
Yeah. That's a great question, and that's what a lot of our students that I want to be a PT, and they get here and they're like, okay, PT school is not for me, or it didn't work out. Like, what are my backup plan options? And we have students that from the undergraduate level can go out into like a corporate wellness type program. I've had some go into cardiac rehab, which is basically like physical therapy, but for the heart there. We've worked with several local organizations with that. We have some going into strength and conditioning. And so really just any age and stage they can work with. And that's where we encourage them, like, find your passion. It may be working with older adults. It may be working with a college age population or a pediatric population. Right. And so they have opportunities in the corporate world, and like a lot of businesses, larger businesses are doing corporate wellness and to help reduce insurance costs, so they can work in that field. They can work in more of a hospital exercise physiology position. They can work with strength and conditioning at the collegiate level, with independent companies. We've had some even open their own business to be like personal trainers and work one-on-one like with strength and conditioning.
There's a real industry there waiting on them. I'm the parent of a young child. She's 8, and kids her age are getting into travel sports and stuff at this point. Right. So there's just kind of this whole industry. I'm a marketing guy, so I'm looking at like, man, like this is a whole industry in and of itself. And then you throw in not only like just like the equipment and things like that, but you throw in these they need conditioning and training and things like that. So there's just sort of all this support that sort of emerges around it that's just really fascinating. Yeah. So it sounds like it's just like such a versatile degree, you know? I mean, in that way, I mean, you can really kind of go so many different directions with it, and enter into all sorts of fields, which is really cool.
And that's our undergrads. Our masters, still a lot of the same fields. You're just, I guess, more qualified for that. You've got further education. But both fields, both an undergrad and a master's degree, would set these students up for certain certifications that would just further assist, their knowledge and their credentials with that, whether it's strength and conditioning or going more like with a clinical population.
What does the online factor in teaching these courses look like? How is online used? Is it used at all? I just kind of what's the mix there? I know some hybrid is available.
Right. Yeah. So we do have some online courses, and that's in our undergrad and our master's program, and our doc students have the opportunity to take some undergraduate courses. I would say that's the least modality we use, just because we're such a hands-on field. I mean, obviously it's hard for me to teach you how to use equipment if you're online and things like that. So we do pride ourselves in more of face-to-face type classes, learning, how to use equipment or having that one-on-one interaction with faculty members and their peers too.
Yeah. Well, these are students too that seem to want to be on. They seem to want to be on their feet all day.
Right. Yeah.
Like they're okay with that, and that's the field that they want to get into, anyways. To use their bodies and to have that interaction as well. So.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with Dr. Killen. I just wanted to take a quick second to thank UNA, who's the sponsor of this episode and every episode of UNA Talks. And we want to encourage you to go to una.edu/online. That's where you're going to learn about all of our online programs and all the things that we're offering across disciplines across our campus. These are the same professors that teach in-class sessions like Dr. Killen and others across our campus that are teaching these online courses, that are delivering these online programs for us and getting you your degree, helping you advance in your career, accomplish your goals in every way. So make sure and check out una.edu/online. You can learn about scholarships, other opportunities that are available to you. You can also connect with us, let us know what you're interested in, and we'll be in contact with you about how we can help. And if you're not following us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, or YouTube, make sure and subscribe and like and all the good stuff there so that you can keep up with all the really cool things we have going on right now at UNA. And now we will get back to our conversation with Dr. Killen. Okay, so the topic at hand today, we could talk about, all of the different research that you do and that you help students conduct, but your specialty is around something that we're all really familiar with, which is caffeine. Mostly, I would say, in the form of coffee. That's kind of that's certainly, my habit, daily habit that this affects. But tell me a little bit about why did you decide to do that research? Why was this, the subject of your dissertation? What led you toward to sort of want to understand this more deeply?
Yeah, so I originally got started with caffeine as a master's student. It was my thesis project looking at caffeine and something we call session rating of perceived exertion. So how hard you feel a workout was, basically. And it stuck with me, I guess you could say. It was just a passion of mine. I think it's really interesting of what all caffeine can do, how it can be beneficial from like everyday life, but also looking at like sports performance. And now I would say that's really transitioned to still looking at caffeine, but also now there's so many products that contain caffeine, and we've done a lot of research with that too in our lab. So that's just really where my passion started and why it's continuing.
So what are some of the maybe misconceptions about caffeine that you feel like there's a public perception about it that you found not to be true, or maybe some just misunderstandings about caffeine that you found were, some preconceived notions that you found weren't exactly accurate?
Yeah, I would say the number one misconception is caffeine dehydrates you. A lot of people think like, oh, if I drink a lot of caffeine, I'm going to get dehydrated because of like having to go to the bathroom excessively, and that's just not true. And we hear that a lot. It's hard to fix wrong facts, or not even a fact.
It was
but
the first
wrong
person
thoughts.
to say that, I wonder, and then it just kind of stuck, didn't it?
Yeah, and it just keeps sticking. If you're like, oh, you shouldn't drink caffeine after you've exercised, and it's just not true. It's still a hydrating factor. It still, contains water, whatever you've mixed your caffeine in, or whatever your source is. So you're not going to get dehydrated by drinking caffeine.
All right, and what are some of the other things, about how it affects, your health and your well-being, or other things that you found that were, sort of dispelling some of these myths?
Yeah. So I would say with people thinking it's going to have a negative impact, It could, but the important thing to remember is not everybody's going to respond the same way. So we talk about a lot of times when we're looking at caffeine research, there's something called responders versus non-responders. So as a responder, you could have a positive response to caffeine. So let's say we're looking at sports performance. It could improve your performance. You could be a negative responder and it impacted your performance in a negative way, or you could be a non-responder and it just didn't impact you at all.
Right.
And so that could depend on a lot of different factors, how much caffeine you took. Are you a habitual consumer of caffeine? So it's not a one-size-fits-all product.
How does caffeine work? I mean, I'm sure you have to just understand kind of at its core, what does caffeine actually do? Why does it have the effect that it does?
Yeah, so in terms of like a physical performance component, it's something we call an analgesic effect. And so it's basically like a pain blunter. And so that can impact like short performance, such as like sprinting performance or resistance training performance, things like that. But we've also seen caffeine has a positive impact if somebody's doing like aerobic work, so a longer run, and it can improve performance that way. And that's more from like a free fatty acid component, sparing glycogen, which is just a fuel component that we would look at. Yeah.
So what were some of the test results that you had with your subjects and people? How did you come to the conclusion that, it seemed to be beneficial for some of these like more long form exercises?
Yeah. So a couple things we've done with that is we could see it has a positive impact on maybe if you're going to run a mile, that you ran it in a quicker time. Or we've also seen it if we say, okay, I want you to go run at 6 miles an hour, and then we're going to ask you how hard that felt, so what we call RPE. And you could say it feels easier. So it just kind of depends on how you're testing it. Are you testing it from a time standpoint, or are you testing it, you're prescribing a time, and then you're asking them how hard it felt with that?
Yeah, so what's the word you used earlier for people to gauge how hard a workout was?
RPE.
RPE, okay. And what does that stand for again?
Rate of perceived exertion.
Rate of perceived exertion.
Yeah.
So is that something that you gauge throughout their exercise or just at the end? Or
Yeah, we actually do both. So
Okay.
we have an acute
I'm getting the hang of this
yeah,
already.
you got
Look,
it
I'm not even
already.
in the lab right now.
So we have an acute RPE that, depending on what you're doing, we may ask you every minute, every 2 minutes or so. It just depends on our protocol. But then we have a session RPE. So let's say we asked you to go run a mile, and you go run a mile and you're done. And then we have you just sit there passively for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to ask you how hard you felt that was the whole time.
Right. So what is the outcomes of this? What was kind of the goal of this research for you, other than maybe to dispel some misunderstandings or just get clarity on that? Or what has been some of the outcomes or some of the the helpful things that you've been able to offer the learning community or the health community?
Yeah, so really the why behind that question was like looking at session RPE is that's typically how we exercise. We exercise based off of how we feel in that that moment. And so that's why we were looking at session RPE. So if I give somebody caffeine, can it blunt how much pain they're feeling or discomfort that they're feeling? And so the idea behind that is, well, if it does, then taking caffeine before exercise could do one of two things. Either you feel better doing it, or you could work at a higher intensity because you did feel better. And so that was kind of the why behind the question, because if you're exercising more or you're exercising at higher intensity, greater for health benefits there.
Right. So what is I guess if you had to summarize the consensus, because you've hinted at it earlier that it does seem to have a lot of benefits there, is the consensus that it is always beneficial? I mean, there's, or at least in the cases that you were able to study,
right?
Or were there drawbacks as well that were inconsistent with that?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and our students know our favorite answer in exercise science is it depends.
Yep.
Because it depends on the person. What works for me may not work for you, or I may be a negative responder and you're a positive responder. And then, like I said earlier, we have non-responders. And so when you've got, let's say, a group of 15 participants, you may have, 2 or 3 that are negative responders. Maybe they had a lot of GI distress, or they just didn't feel well after consuming the amount of caffeine we prescribed. and or sometimes we'll call it doping. And so we're not pharmacists, we're not prescribing any medication or anything, but we gave them the caffeine with that. And so they may have a negative response, and then we have some that had a positive response or improved performance. And then you could even have some individuals that didn't improve, and they didn't have a negative response, but they didn't have a positive. It just didn't do anything for them. And so when we combine all those people from a data component, it really can wash out the positive effect, because you're like, oh, it had a little effect. But if you take out the negative responders and the non-responders, it really does work for some people. You just got to figure out, are you a positive responder?
Yeah. Well, hypothetically, if someone's listening or watching and let's say they drink a couple of cups of coffee a day and aren't maybe the most disciplined exercisers in the world. Just speaking, just in case, of course, talking about myself, is there any benefit to daily consumption of caffeine, or is there any major drawback? You're probably going to say it depends, but is there any consistent benefit that you saw for people who or maybe had a high tolerance for it?
Yeah, so we've had students that are habitual caffeine consumers, like high caffeine consumers. And obviously, most of the time, they can really tell, because we have to get them off of caffeine for 24 hours. So they don't like us for 24 hours. And so that's their washout period. And most of the time, they can tell when they've consumed that caffeine because they're so used to it. So is there a negative to not consuming caffeine? I would say it depends on the person with that. But if you're a regular consumer of caffeine, you're probably definitely going to notice if you're not getting your 2 cups of coffee that day. So when we look at mood or even cognitive performance with that, some of the literature says, there's a benefit to it. But is that benefit due to you just got them back up to their normal caffeine consumption? So it does look positive compared to when they were off of caffeine.
Right.
So, yeah.
So having this experience, and you've had, your undergrad and graduate experience at UNA and then your doctoral program, having sort of lived that trajectory, how does that inform and had this very specific field of research that you conducted with, these, really, informative outcomes and things like that. How does that inform the way you teach? How does your experience getting to do this kind of research, not only, of course, you're able to instruct your students to sort of add to that, specifically around caffeine. I think whenever I was there, they were actually doing sort of a similar study, and it was around a caffeinated person who was using the elliptical. But how do you inform sort of their best practices? What are some of the big takeaways, from this kind of study that can apply to any student's research?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think my style of teaching is 1, discussion based, but 2, practical application. How can we take what they've learned in the classroom and use that into their field, whether they're going to be a physical therapist or their strength and conditioning? And I think it just all goes back to education. People don't know what they don't know. And so in exercise science, we can't assume everybody knows, some positives or potential negatives of caffeine consumption, just like what are all the positives of exercise and different types of exercise that could be beneficial for different populations.
Yeah. What is the, speaking more about just kind of the classroom experience, and you said your teaching style is just very conversational. You're just trying to, what are the questions that students start to ask, or the ways that they engage that lets now they're understanding sort of, where we're headed and what the goals of this are and what the principles are? What are the kind of questions that you're sort of hoping to hear?
Yeah. So I would say the why. Why are we doing this? And to me, that lets me know they really understand the purpose, or they're seeking to know what the purpose is, whether it's, different fitness assessments where I teach our intro to fitness testing class and we're out in the lab a lot. And so not just going through the motions of this is how you would conduct an assessment, but the why behind it. Why do we need to know this piece of information? How can we use that to build an exercise prescription program for somebody? And then I also teach on our clinical side. I'm our main clinical professor. And so really taking what we've learned maybe in like our intro to fitness testing class, and we've got to make modifications for certain populations. Maybe we're working with a Parkinson's group. And so understanding, okay, this is what the foundation is, but how am I going to help it fit this specific population? And sometimes that's done through like case studies we'll do during class. We try to get out in the community and work with real people as much as possible, and so the students have opportunities to really see their work come to life at that point.
Yeah, what is how important is that? I mean, just to see not only the real world application or the practice of that, but the results whenever you're really just starting your educational journey, but also kind of starting your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, students are going to sit in a classroom, they're going to take the test, so they know the material, but going to apply the material can be so different than answering a question on paper. And so I think having that experiential learning opportunity out in the community, working with different populations. Like we've had the opportunity to work with the YMCA's Rock Steady group, which is a Parkinson's class, and just seeing my students talk about it or hear what they're saying, and like, oh, we learned this in class, and that's the exercise they were doing in the class, and knowing why they're doing that exercise has just been, I think, really eye-opening for them to see those opportunities. Even if it's not what they want to do as a career, they see the importance of actually going out and applying those hands-on skills.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying our conversation with Dr. Killen. I know I am. It's really cool to learn about all the stuff that caffeine does to help us exercise and how we're researching that. It's really cool. I just wanted to take a quick second to thank UNA for sponsoring this, and also point you toward una.edu/online so you can learn about all of our online programs. You can talk to our recruiters, talk to our program coordinators. All of the same professors across our campus are the ones who teach our online courses, and they love to talk to you about their programs as much as you'd like to ask. They'll be willing to answer. And make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, formerly known as Twitter, and YouTube. We're doing some really cool stuff right now, and just want to make sure you're a part of that. So leave comments, ask questions, engage with us on social. We're there for you. And now let's get back to our conversation with Dr. Killen. So what programs, you're involved in a lot in the Department of Kinesiology. What all programs are you involved in that, students interested in kinesiology, exercise science, doing this kind of research? What all programs do we offer right now at the undergrad and graduate level?
Yeah, so at the undergrad level, we have an exercise science degree with 3 concentrations. And so those options are pre-professional. So if a student's wanting to go to like PT, PA school, that helps them get those prerequisites. They're built into our program now. And then we have a clinical concentration. So that's really more in my area that I'm working in. And that's anybody that wants to work with what we call a special population. So somebody that's just not a healthy person, and not in a negative way, but they may be a diabetic, they may be a cancer survivor, they may have Parkinson's. So a population that we're going to have to make adjustments to in terms of exercise prescription. And then our other one is our applied concentration. So that may be somebody that wants to go be a strength and conditioning coach. They want to work in a wellness program. That would be the best fit for them.
Yeah. And what about our graduate level?
Yeah, so we have a master's degree in health and human performance, and they can have a concentration in exercise science. And so that's geared a little more towards the research route if you go exercise science. And then we have our doctoral program, which is a doctorate in exercise science and health promotion.
Yeah. What is the spectrum of students that you like? How do you, if a student's sort of undecided and they're coming to you around, hey, I could kind of go either way, I'm just sort of figuring this out, which is so often, someone who's just starting their college journey is they still have a lot of questions, and they're probably going to change their major a lot of the time, right? Like, I know I did, and I'm sure a lot of our students have, and that's fine. What are some of the indicators of that of these different concentrations that you're looking for that people may be a better fit for that they don't even realize?
Yeah, so all 3 concentrations have the same core. So when we have maybe a freshman or even an early sophomore come in, not exactly sure what I want to do, so I don't know which concentration. We always lead them toward what do you think you want to do at that moment, and with our concentration courses, it's really not till later on in their program that they're going to hit those. So really more junior, senior level. So let's say they come in thinking they want to go to PT school, and so they go pre-professional. And then they get into it and they're like, I really didn't even know I had this opportunity in exercise science. Most of the time, they're not going to lose many credits, if any, because our core overlaps from all three concentrations. So it's not you've got to come in and stick to one concentration. There's still some opportunities for change without losing a lot of course credits, because I know a lot of students worry about that, like, oh, it's going to take me a whole extra year, and that's not the case typically. And getting into like some of our major core classes, so exercise physiology and intro to fitness testing, I think expose students to a lot of opportunities that they may have with that degree. They could also get involved with research to help, hopefully push them in a direction of a career path.
Right. What is, I guess, what is the thing, as a teacher, I asked you earlier, like, what are the questions that they need to be asking, or that you're kind of hoping that they ask to really see that they're engaged? And you said why. They want to know why. What is your why at the end of the day? Not only why for doing research, but why for teaching? What connects you to their experience today, and sort of drives you? What's driven you the last 10 years at UNA? What do you think is going to drive you forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say my why goes back to what was the whole purpose of my career? Like, what path did I see? And somebody asked me, I remember going through UNA's, their, I think, job services or whatever it was called at the time, of getting ready for PT school interviews. And I remember the individual asked me, why do you want to be a PT? And my answer was pretty simple, of like, well, I want to help people, and I like, the personal interaction with that. And I remember her saying, have you ever thought about teaching? And I thought, no, that's the last thing I want to do, because again, I just have a lot of educators in my family, and I just didn't see that as my path. And, but now I see that is my why. Like, I just love interacting with students, getting to know them, helping them figure out their career path, and just seeing that light bulb moment off when they either really connect with a concept in class, or they figure out this is what I want to do the rest of my life as my career, is just so rewarding. And so that's what I feel like is my driving passion. And that goes from like our undergrads to our grad students, and even up to our doc students with that. And so that's the why of, why I see myself here. Why is it important? And I don't view it as a job. I enjoy, coming to work every day, interacting with our students. I've got great coworkers. We've got a great group of graduate assistants that, they feel like they're making a difference in our lab, which they are, and they run our lab. I can't run our lab and teach too, so our graduate assistants are very vital there.
How do these programs connect with the community? We've talked a lot about what's going on in the lab, but you mentioned earlier, like, all of these different populations that students get to work with. What's the impact of these students on our community? I mean, I'm sure that's hard to measure, but it sounds like UNA is really able to like help a lot, and like, and this is not just for our benefit, but it really seems to benefit all of these different areas of the Shoals. Yeah,
I would say we've had a significant impact on the community from a wide variety of populations. In terms of research, a lot of times our research projects are geared around using a college student population, but sometimes we'll be looking specifically maybe for a running population. So the running group in the Shoals has been very instrumental in helping those students collect their data, and they're excited to come in our lab and get to see our equipment and see their different test results and things like that. We've had opportunities to work with more like tactical populations in the Shoals, but as well as in the state of Alabama. We've worked some with the police department. We've had the opportunity this past December to work with the FBI group that was in town to do some training, and we got to do some VO2 testing on them. But then also having experience at like the YMCA, which is the Shoals community. And then also through like our faculty and staff wellness program that's run out of the Kinesiology department. So it's just another opportunity for our grad students to have that hands-on experience working with, people that work at UNA, but how that can lead into the community too.
Yeah. And with all that in mind, what is your hope for this field of study? The program at UNA sort of with technology, you're talking about all of this, all this equipment and all of these amazing tools that we have at our disposal, and getting more and more as we go, as the program grows and develops. I'm sure technology is kind of at the core of a lot of how it's going to evolve and how it's going to inform what you're doing. But what is your hope overall for this field of study, for the department, for the students here at UNA? 10 years from now, right? Like, what would be sort of the vision and the hope that the problems that you're able to solve, the people you're able to help, what does that look like in your mind?
Yeah, I think I see it as a wide scope, anywhere from assisting local athletes up to maybe more of our clinical population in the shoals, tactical populations. So just really showing the shoals area what UNA and what exercise science specifically has to offer. I think back to, a lot of people for a long period of time maybe weren't familiar with what exercise science did. So I think educating people on like what all we do, that physical education's housed in our department, but none of us are going to be physical education teachers. We're not a teaching granting degree here. And so just what all we can do and what all we have to offer. And I think
you can always go next door in the College of Education to get a teaching degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that seems to, you're saying that's kind of a misunderstanding of people think that's what you guys are. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just typically they're like, oh, you're going to be a PE teacher. Or at least that's what people always said to me. My dad was a physical education teacher. And I'm like, no, not exactly. Like, I won't have a teaching certificate. I mean, we do overlap some in, what our students are studying and some courses that they take. But I would just say, educating the community and, how can we move forward with the opportunities we have in our lab.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Lauren, thanks so much for your time. This was really cool. We could keep going about all the stuff that the program's doing, and I could ask you a lot more questions about caffeine, but I'll spare our listeners those details. But thanks so much for being here.
Yeah,
really appreciate it. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And tune in next time for more UNA Talks, where we're going to talk with more professors around this campus about all the really cool stuff that they do every day.